Everything you know about chocolate starts here. By the end of this video, you'll understand how most of the bars you see on the shop shelves have no resemblance to what's inside this pod. This is a cacao pod. This is the basis of any chocolate bar. It grows on trees in rainforest areas in the world, predominantly in Africa and also South America. And it is a glorious fruit because it's so good for you. And actually the original recipes by the Incas were there to show us how healthy this stuff really is. Let's crack it open and see what's inside. Look at that. They are the cacao beans surrounded by this flesh. It smells a bit like sort of lots of tropical fruit, but you wouldn't say that's necessarily cacao. So inside here is about 30 to 50 cacao beans inside this kind of white fleshy fruit. At this point, it doesn't actually taste at all like chocolate because these beans are raw. We need to ferment them, we need to roast them, and that's what's going to give the flavour of chocolate. So let's take it out of the pod. By doing so, we have to take the beans off the placenta, which is the bit in the middle. By doing this, we'll get them inside. Actually, I'll also cut a bean for you, and you can see what it looks like in the inside. Now, this white stuff on the outside is actually going to eventually dry as it's fermenting. But at the moment, you really want to make sure it's getting exposed to the air because that's where the bacteria is going to get in there to start the fermentation process. If you open it up inside, you see it looks a little bit like a brain. That's the basis of nibs. So the nibs are literally when the bean's being roasted, it falls apart into the nib type structure. But that's going to look a little bit less kind of like that and a lot darker brown as it ferments. Right, let me try some and I'll tell you what it tastes like. I had this before in India. It's absolutely delicious. It doesn't taste like chocolate. There's kind of like a little bit of a hint of cacao in the background, but it doesn't taste like chocolate at the moment. It just tastes like any sort of tropical fruit. The next stage is to let these ferment, and that's just going to take time. You have to let the bacteria work its magic. So it's quite simple. If you're in like many parts of the world, they use banana leaves. We don't have any banana leaves here in East Anglia, so I'll put this cover over it instead. We'll put this into a warm, dark place and let it have a bit of time to ferment.
1 week later.
1 week later, and we've fermented the beans. Let's have a look and see what they're like inside. Look at that. First thing you notice is you get this really strong smell of vinegar. That's because the fermentation process has happened. The bacteria's been in there having a party for a week, and you get this real strong vinegar smell. Now, when you're actually going to make the chocolate, you want to get rid of that. And that's what conching is. Conching is getting rid of that acetic acid, which is what's in there at the moment. Now, even though this is raw cacao, we're going to give it a bit of a heating up, not quite a roasting, but about 40 degrees, just to dry them out a little bit more so we can take the skins off the outside. Now let's put them in the oven. That's ridiculous. Look how few there are for the size of the tray. But anyway, we're only going to make a few bars out of this. Let me show you how to do that now. Right, give it about 10 minutes. So these are now cooled down. It's just time to do the worst job of all, and that is remove the outside skins. Now, we don't have a winnowing machine here. I'm gonna have to do this all by hand. Basically, if you look at a bean, and here's what I was working on earlier, in the inside you have the actual, that's gonna become the nibs, that's what we want. On the outside you have this annoying husk. But when we do actually open it up, that's what it looks like, and we'll crush that, and we have the nibs. That's what nibs are, literally just the bean, slightly roasted, falls apart, and this is the basis of what's going to make our chocolate bar. I better get started. I guess I'll see you in a few hours. Man alive, why have I done this? This is for the sake of content, guys. I'm doing this for you. I hope you appreciate it. No, it's not done. It's all AI. It's not AI. It's barely I.
1 eternity later.
Well, that was fun. Done the job though. That's what's left behind. After all that work, I've picked this out of the pod, I've fermented it, I have cool roasted it, and I've also picked off all the outside husk, and we're left with these. This is the inside of the beans. This is nibs. You've probably come across nibs before. It's just literally a bean. This has been partly roasted and it falls apart, and that's what it looks like. Still, smells of acetic acid. It's still got that smell to it because we are now going to grind it into chocolate with our other ingredients. So let's do that now. Let me tell you what the key dynamics of a good chocolate bar are. It's cocoa nibs and this stuff, cocoa butter, we're going to add to it. This is what gives it the snap. It's what makes it temper, what locks it together. The beans are what gives it the flavour. This comes from that. Think about like olives and olive oil. It's the same thing here. They crush the beans to get out of this stuff. The stuff that's left over, by the way, that becomes the cocoa powder you make your hot chocolate with. But these two together is what makes delicious chocolate. I've just melted down the cocoa butter. Let's put it into our melanger. Melonger is a little grinder, and we're going to just put it in there and grind it with our cocoa beans. Our beans go in there, and let's go. Have a look at this. That is now grinding. That's the basis of all chocolate right there. Next I have my sweeteners. Now this is the combination I call Sweet Lock. It's actually been trademarked as well. It tastes like sugar, but it won't give you the sugar spike. Let's add that in there now. And set it off. The smell is incredible. You get that kind of wafting out. It's a bit vinegary. The key thing here is we're doing this for a good reason. Yes, we're breaking it down into smoother and smoother chocolate, but more importantly actually, we're getting the air in there. And as the air goes in, that means that this recipe is getting less and less acidic and more rich and creamy. That's had about an hour, and the next ingredient I'm going to put in there is milk powder, but because milk powder's got lactose, I'm also going to add in there some whey, which is higher in protein, and cream powder, which is higher in fats, bringing down the sugar content. That's thick already. This is going to make a fantastic milk chocolate recipe. Put the lid on and leave it 24 hours. 24 hours later, are you ready for the big reveal? Ta-da! That's what 24 hours of grinding looks like. All those ingredients have had that 24 hours to grind, to get smaller and smaller, but most importantly of all, the acetic acid has had a chance to be conched out of the recipe. That means it's evaporated. As the air's getting in there, it's been warming up, all the liquid and any of the acetic acid has left the recipe, making it absolutely divine. That's the smell of chocolate that you're looking for. But we're not finished. We need to make this into a bar. Let's go. The final stage is to get this into these, but we have to temper it to do so. So let's empty it into our bowl. Nice and smooth, look at that. When you work with chocolate, you do get used to it after a while. However, you never get used to that smell that comes off. It's absolutely divine. Now I'm going to do a temperature check before I start tempering it, and I'll explain exactly what this is for. Right, so let's just take the temperature, and you can see on the probe here, it's about 34.3 degrees. That's too warm at the moment, so we'll let it cool down a little bit, keep stirring it, get it to a magic temperature, which I've worked out is the perfect one for this chocolate to temper. That is almost there, hang on. Get a bit more air into it. Perfect, right, we are in business. So that is now the right temperature to add this stuff. Now this is cocoa butter, but this is different. I've actually put it in a sous vide for about 48 hours to make it the perfect crystalline structure for chocolate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grate this. It's called seeding into the chocolate. And as I do, the little crystals that are perfect in here are going into my bowl. And as I mix them in, the chocolate at the right temperature is not going to just melt them, but rather, and this is quite magic, match up the same crystalline structure that I've got in there in that tempered chocolate now. This is a bit of magic, right? Chocolate is a really weird thing. It's very technical. It's also something that you probably take for granted and just eat it and go, it's delicious. But to make it is not easy, and I hope you understand that now. But look at that. That's come from the pod all the way through to being tempered. Perfect. Let's pour it into our molds. Now obviously I'd normally be weighing these out, but for this one, I'm just going to let them fill the molds. This is just for a little bit of fun for us to enjoy here in the kitchen. And of course, you're always going to have bubbles in there, so you can put it on a vibration machine, or you can do the old bubble dance. Let's get rid of the air in there. Now we have a chiller here. If you don't have one of these, you can do it in the fridge, but I think the best temperature is about 10 degrees centigrade to let your chocolate set properly, and it should just pop out of the mold as it shrinks slightly in the mold. So let's put it in there for about half an hour. Time for the big reveal. Should we see how they've turned out? Look at that. Look at the shine on that. Okay, genuinely a little bit excited. I didn't think it was going to temper quite that well. Look at the shine. That is perfect tempering. That's actually better than I thought, because we don't normally temper in that way because we make so much chocolate. So I'm actually delighted with that. What about the snap though? That's the real sign of good tempering. Yes, there we go. That's what chocolate should look like. But of course, you and I know the key is in the tasting. So let's give it a go. Oh, that's good. The thing about the chocolate is, let it get to your body temperature. But these just come out of the fridge, they're a bit cold. Let it warm up in your mouth, it'll then melt nicely. And that's because it's been tempered to melt at your mouth temperature. As that melts, that is so good. So good. And that's how you turn a cacao pod into chocolate. For more content like this, please like and subscribe. Love you as always. Mwah.